So, for the last part of the rock cycle lecture, we are going to be looking at metamorphic rocks. To understand metamorphic rocks, first we need to understand a bit about the larger rock cycle itself. So, we're going to start with igneous rocks. Igneous rocks, which are generally interlocking crystals formed by melt, and then melt and crystallization. Whereas your sedimentary rocks are formed from other rocks, by the processes of weathering, transport, deposition, and diagenesis. And this is how we get sedimentary rocks. That this can happen to any of the other types of rocks as well. Now the final class of rock is metamorphic rock. Just like the others, all metamorphic rocks start out as something else. Then what happens is when they start out as either sedimentary rocks or igneous rocks. And we're going to call these rocks they start out as parent rocks for in a moment, and what will become apparent very shortly. And what happens to the parent rock is it undergoes heat plus pressure, and you get recrystallization and remineralization. Remineralization giving you an entirely different rock. And so it's sort of like the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. If you take the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and subject them to lots of heat and pressure, they'll metamorphose. They'll retain many of the same elements the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers had, but they'll be functionally and chemically a little bit different. And so they'll be the metamorphic Power Rangers. So there are three factors that influence what kind of metamorphic rock you get. Three principal ones. First, these is going to be your parent rock. Second is going to be temperature. For example, many minerals that crystallize at one temperature are very uncomfortable at hotter or lower temperatures. Kind of like San Diegans, who only really like it when the temperature is between about 60 and 75 degrees. And so we can call some of these minerals that we've seen earlier in the lesson geothermometers, because they are very indicative of what temperature a rock was at. And when you see them in a metamorphic rock, you can be very sure that of the temperature that rock format with just for the presence of those minerals. Now, mineral growth is also sensitive to pressure. As I've probably told you before, you could take a diamond and heat it up hot enough, it'll melt and recrystallize as graphite, which you can then use to sign your divorce papers, because that's why that's going to happen. But there's a number of other minerals that are very sensitive to the pressure that they are found at and will only form in very deep environments. We call these geobarometers because their presence or absence will indicate how high the pressure a rock was at. And then I also like to mention there's you have confining pressure from equal to all directions or directional pressure, because what often happens during the recrystallization process is you get the growth of foliations. Basically, it looks like layers, but instead you're looking at mineral bands in the rock. So what I'm going to do on the whiteboard here is do a diagram of pressure and temperature and discuss, show you what kind of metamorphism takes place and what kind of rocks form at different heats and temperatures and pressures. Pressures, and we're going to track their evolution as they go into higher grades, which are usually referred to either higher temperatures or higher pressures. And pressure on this axis is going to increase downwards. Pressure and the sort of environments where you might find these rocks. So, first thing we're going to do here is metamorphism is also, knowing this is also very useful because it helps you back out plate tectonic environments and understand plate tectonic events better, past ones even better. For example, in a subduction zone, you'll typically get burial metamorphism, which is generally fairly low grade. But as rocks find a way further and further down the trench, you're going to get cooked more, but you're going to be in ground that's going to be relatively cold for how deep it is. And so you're going to get blue schist and eclogite are the two minerals that rocks that tend to form in these environments, and they are common in products of subduction. Whereas further inland from the subduction zone, you're getting kind of a more regional metamorphism. You find this in a lot of the rocks of New England and much of the Appalachians. And also when you have magma nearby, you're getting contact metamorphism. So a good example of this is this sort of, if you have an intrusive body, you'll see a bunch of interesting sorts of stuff that involve not only the rock getting cooked, but also some mixing of the chemicals, especially if there's hot fluid connected with a lava body or intrusive body. Here's a basalt dyke. This is the sedimentary shale around it that got cooked to all ends. Very high grade, close to the basalt feature, and a bit lower grade further afield. And of course, you could also get hydrothermal metamorphism. This is like stuff you see happening in the mid-ocean ridges. It's actually how we also get our state rock. Very good. So now we're going to take a journey into the world of metamorphic rocks. We're also going to see that we have different facies because different environments are going to usually start out with different parent rocks. If the parent rock is primarily silicate minerals, you're still going to see a number of the same minerals pop up as the rock undergoes greater metamorphism. However, whatever metamorphic rock you end up with has to be compatible with its parent rock. So, for example, if you start with limestone, you're going to get marble. Keep cooking marble hot enough, it will eventually decay back into carbon dioxide and calcite. Likewise, if you get sandstone, sandstone is just going to cook the quartz grains till they fuse together and you have quartzite. In both the cases of sandstone and marble, they're basically just grains fused together and grow. Grow is about all happening, but this is definitely still creating a very different rock. Now, quartzite, its ultimate fate, if you keep cooking it, is to just sort of melt down to nothingness. Now, how about some other rocks that we look at? What happens if you start with a shale? Shales are kind of fun. So shales actually have a lot of interesting stuff happening to them. What will first happen is your clay minerals will start to fuse together, and you'll get a low-grade metamorphic rock called slate. Slate. As your slate grows, you'll then get a rock that is kind of where the clays start to recrystallize as micas, and you get a rock called, and you get the falling rock. Right. So the way to think about it is, slate is commonly used for pool tables because the clay minerals are really nicely aligned. They're all basically, you have this beautiful foliation of aligned crystals, all their planes of cleavage lined up. Now, what happens when you get to the next level is that The micas make the rock noticeably shiny, kind of like Phil Collins' bald forehead. Now, the thing about Phil Collins, the dude is pissed off in a lot of his songs. Like, seriously, gets a little heavy for me. Like, sometimes I can't handle all that Phil Collins, you know? All his great hits of the 80s. And I want something a little bit easier to listen to. And so if you love Phil Collins' bald head, but you want something a little lighter, there is Phil Light, the rock that's made from metamorphosed shale. Now, as you continue to metamorphose, you're going to get some stuff called schist. What's starting to happen now is you're growing new minerals, and the mineral layers are separating from one another. As micas grow, you start to get schist. But actually, schist is, again, more of a texture, and you can get lots of varying mineralogies, depending on what environment you're looking at. So, for example, we have green schist tends to grow when you have when your metamorphism is fairly shallow and hot, whereas blue schist tends to happen when your metamorphism is cold and deep. So, like, think of this as we have old schist, new schist, green schist, blue schist. Now, as you continue to cook the schist, you're going to start getting the crystallization of feldspars and amphiboles. And you're going to get thick bands of these, and we're going to call it, looks like granite, but it is gneiss. And gneiss will be gneiss will form at the highest temperatures, and eventually, if you keep cooking this, it's going to melt back down into migmatite. You're going to start seeing the actual layers melt. Now, the final rock I want to talk about in this whole schematic is what's a process we call retrograde metamorphism. So in some places, you start with peridotite, which generally forms at very deep and high temperatures. Peridotite then undergoes something called retrograde metamorphism, where as it's brought up to the surface and it interacts with fluid, it reverses, it metamorphoses into lighter minerals, and you get the California state rock, which is serpentine. Serpentine. There's a couple other metamorphic rocks out there. There's a whole family of them, but this definitely covers the most important. Here, I took the serpentine outside already, but yes, that's the California state rock. That should sum up where we're going with this. All right.